All right, on to foreign policy we go. North Korean military officials confirming recent missile tests were practiced to, quote, mercilessly strike South Korean and American targets. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst. He's chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Jack Keane is here. General, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. What do you make of this in North Korea?
Well, the North Koreans got a couple of strategies working here. Number one is, ever since President Yoon took over in leadership in South Korea from President Moon, he's been much tougher in terms of relationships with North Korea. President Moon was really seeking reconciliation, even at the expense of, I believe, security. And that's not the case now. And he's forged a much closer relationship with the United States. And what has really got Kim Jong-un's attention is they have returned to full throttle protocol of exercises, not just between the United States and South Korea, but other countries as well. And every time one of those exercises take place, we get a fuselage of testing of ballistic short-range, medium-range missiles. Another thing I think is going to take place is Kim Jong-un will likely test a nuclear device sometime in the upcoming weeks. And I believe after that, while he's refused to go to negotiations, he will then go to negotiations. And he'll reason that he's raised the anxiety and the tension so much that'll give him leverage going into these negotiations to seek concessions from the United States on what? On sanctions. And two, they want recognition by the United States de facto that North Korea is a nuclear power. They've had this kind of success at negotiations going all the way back to the Bush administration by ramping up tension and anxiety and then getting concessions. The one time it did not work was with the Trump administration. So that is really what is at play here. I don't believe, despite the fuselage of missiles, that war is imminent with North Korea. They know that that would mean the loss of their regime and the loss of Kim's life, to be quite frank about it. And China wants no part of that. China does not want the peninsula destabilized because of war. That would take President Xi off of all of his strategic objectives. So I think that is really what's at play here.
Yeah, but I mean, how does he keep getting away with, bullying the world? And should there be a response if he were to actually play with nuclear weapons? Do you expect that? And then, you say China doesn't want anything to do with it. I mean, Indonesia is now the host nation for the G20 summit, confirming both President Biden and Xi Jinping will be at that meeting, the two of them, two-day meeting next week. The White House is confirming that U.S. and Chinese officials are working to arrange the first face-to-face meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden on the sidelines of this summit. Got to get your take on what's going to happen here. We're still waiting for Joe Biden to bring up some of the important issues with Xi Jinping, which we have no evidence of. I'm talking about the origins of COVID-19 and all of the bad behavior of the CCP.
Well, the relationship is not good. I mean, tensions have not been this bad for some time. It's largely due to President Xi's aggression, certainly, and obviously, as you mentioned, not dealing forthrightly with the origins of COVID-19. But I think there's also an opportunity here. Certainly, discussions are always a good thing, particularly among rival powers. I mean, we want to break the historical cycle that a rising power and a ruling power usually resolves in conflict when you go back through history. And we don't want that to happen, obviously, and China is certainly a rising superpower that wants to take the United States' place in the world. They've said that openly. But I think we got to get the message very clear to President Xi by saying to him, look at what's happened to the world as a result of Russia's aggression and the world economy and how oil prices and everything has become destabilized as a result of that. And tip your hat to him. We appreciate the fact that he's taken a stand against the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine that Russia obviously has been advertising, but it also points up the obvious danger to the world by when you have this kind of aggression. And certainly what we're laying on the table here is his aggression towards Taiwan. And I think the president's got to look him in the eye and tell him unequivocally that if he takes military aggression against Taiwan. He's forcing my hand, President Biden, to have to get involved and defend Taiwan. And he will be the cause of destabilizing the world economy, not the United States, and into a major conflict, which the world certainly should try to avoid, and you and I should try to avoid this kind of conflict. The thing that concerns me here, though, is President Biden is going to go into this likely weaker as a president as a result of today's elections. President Xi is stronger as a result of the 20th Party Congress, where his power has been consolidated. He's got the wind at his back a little bit, and he may be looking at this administration as a lame duck administration, knowing another one may be coming in 2 years that would actually have a stronger view towards dealing with China. And we don't want President Xi incentivized in any way. We already know he outguns us and outmans us, and he has a military advantage. We don't want him thinking he has also a political, diplomatic, and geopolitical advantage over the president.
All really important points, General. Let's not forget what Xi Jinping said when they celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the CCP. Anybody who gets involved in China's business with Taiwan, their heads will be busted to dust. Remember that one? We're going to be watching this. This is such a serious issue, and of course, it's going to be on the table for some time. General, thanks very much for your insights, as always. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah. Great talking to you, Maria. Thank you.